I'm Hillary Hendershot, your host, and this is Profit Boss Radio, The Retirement Years, episode 150. The Retirement Years on Profit Boss Radio is your weekly wealth building and retirement mastermind. Profit Boss is also a movement for women who want to reach their full wealth potential and be financially free. Let me be your guide as you defy the odds, take control of your money, grow your wealth, and retire well. Do you want the secrets of wealth and retirement to be yours? This is the place. I'm Hillary Hendershot. I'm a certified financial planner running a leading advisory firm for women and couples, and I'm sharing with you real stories from real life and real people who are making it happen. Forget Wall Street. You ready? Let's do this. Wow, wow, wow. Episode 150. What a massive milestone. Thank you so much for being a loyal listener. I hope you've enjoyed 149 other episodes of Profit Boss Radio. And I want you to know there are no accidents. As soon as you change your vibrations in the world, new people and new conversations and new opportunities will show up for you. I hope you find that to be true as well. I have been doing some very deep soul-searching work and allowing myself to put pen to paper and not only acknowledge, but declare meaningful and inspiring intentions that I have for people and the world that I haven't let myself say out loud yet. I've also asked my team to participate and declare their own purpose on the planet, their infinite concern or calling in the world. And we've set aside the time to co-create a brand new mission and vision that incorporates all of what is most important to all of us and weave all that together into a vision we'll be bringing in for the coming months. So much, much, much more on that to come for sure. So this is all happening and our new vision and mission got crystallized. And of course, as soon as that happens, I start seeing and hearing new things in the world. You've had this experience. It's like, oh, that's always been there. I just didn't hear it for what it is until now. Now I get how relevant it is to me. Now I'm listening with new ears. Then I crossed paths with today's guest. Actually, he reached out to me on Facebook. He's someone whose work and writing on the topic of money I've quoted for years. And as I'm doing the research to compile my thoughts for today's interview, I discover he's engaged in this very same work. And in today's interview, he'll take you through his own journey from being a deeply respected and very influential coach on the psychology of money to being a global leader in the movement to visualize and create a better world now. You'll want to listen to today's interview because if you find yourself stuck thinking and stressing about the operations side of money, the logistics, this is your opportunity to get out of that thinking and into a more transcendent state. Let me tell you about today's guest. George Kinder is internationally recognized as the father of the life planning movement. He's Harvard educated and revolutionized financial advice for over 30 years by training over 3,000 professionals in 30 countries in the field of financial life planning. He founded the Kinder Institute of Life Planning in 2003. His books and his trainings are all about freedom. He wrote The 7 Stages of Money Maturity, Lighting the Torch, and Life Planning for You. That's 3 different books. After 20 years in publication, his classic 7 Stages of Money Maturity, which I quote all the time, was still featured in a July 2018 Wall Street Journal article, The Financial Books That Should Be on Your Summer Reading List. That's pretty cool to have your work recognized by the Wall Street Journal 20 years after you published it. In his new book, A Golden Civilization and the Map of Mindfulness, Kinder draws on 50 years as a mindfulness practitioner, seriously 50 years, and you'll hear him share in the interview that he meditates 3 hours a day, over 30 years as a mindfulness teacher, and his experience training financial advisors globally to challenge the basic tenets of how society is organized, our understanding of democracy, of space and time in our own hearts. His objective is to bring greater levels of freedom everywhere. He was the first winner of the Financial Planning Association's Heart of Financial Planning Award, which recognizes individuals who demonstrate commitment and passion in doing extraordinary work to contribute or give back to the financial planning community and or the public. He's been named one of the 35 most influential people in financial services, one of the top icons and innovators in the financial planning industry, the first of 15 transformational advisors whose vision most changed the industry, and has been inducted into the Financial Planning Magazine Hall of Fame. He's been featured in the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Time Magazine, Financial Planning Today, the Journal of Financial Planning, Investment News, and the New York Times. High-level money teachers like this are a bit hard to find, but if you're looking for more episodes like this one, which I'd say is focused on the first two of my 7 Steps to Wealth framework, Decide and Speak, I'd recommend checking out episode 135 with Brad Klontz, episode 121, which is actually my interview with Kathy Heller on the Don't Keep Your Day Job podcast, but she let us play it here. Episode 113 with Steve Siebold, and episode 111 with Denise Duffield-Thomas. So I've also decided to offer 20 copies of George's most recent book on a first-come, first-served basis. If you'd like a copy of A Golden Civilization and the Map of Mindfulness, please send an email to media@hillaryhendershot.com with your name and shipping address, and we'll happily send you a copy. This is for U.S. residents only. Sorry for those of you lovely folks listening internationally. Please know I adore you, just not your shipping rates. And now, here's my interview with the iconic George Kinder. Welcome, George, to Profit Boss Radio.
Hi, Hillary. Great to be here.
It's such an honor. I shared with you, I've quoted you and talked about your work. I have shared and re-encapsulated. I've summarized it. I think I even have a podcast episode called The 7 Stages of Money Maturity, where I essentially summarized your entire book. So it's an honor to speak with you live. Thanks for being here.
Well, what a thrill to be with someone who actually knows what I've been talking about all these years.
Yes. And, interestingly, I was mentored into the business. My first year in financial planning was 1999. My father was my mentor, and he was a graduate of the Life Planning Institute. And so
wow.
you were dinner time conversation in my, in my nascent years. So there you go. Would you have such a, and your bio talks about your work as an author and as an influencer in the financial planning industry, but what it doesn't really talk about is kind of the timeline of your life. I think you started in art and creativity and then somehow ended up in tax, and now you're writing about mindfulness. How do you narrate your career? Could you tell us that story in your words?
Sure. Well, I mean, the truth is that I've always considered myself to be an artist and wildly creative is what I've attempted to be all my life. But there was this saying back when I was a young man that do what you love and the money will follow. You've probably heard that saying.
I have
occasionally. But what I found was that no one would pay me either for one of my poems or for a meditation.
Okay.
And that's what I really loved. So but I was really good. I'm a Harvard grad. I entered Harvard as a math major, believe it or not, and then found my way to English literature. So I was really good mathematically. And so it was easy to kind of grab onto accounting skills and financial skills. And I became a financial planner in order to be able to make enough money to kind of fund what it is that I really wanted to do. So for a long time, I had this split inside of me that I'm passionate about doing something more creative and more meaningful in life, but I have to earn a living with money. So, and at first that was a difficult split. And over time, as I came to reconcile the two, I realized that there was a huge kind of advantage isn't quite the right word, but I could add a lot in the financial world by bringing this understanding of longing to have a career that's different from what I found I was able to make money with into kind of the conversation of financial planners all over the world. And that yearning to be free is really what has linked all of my work. Every book I've written about is really about freedom, and the yearning to be free is something that life planning is all about. How do we deliver that into clients' lives? How do we live it ourselves? How do we discover what it is that we really want to be? And it goes even very, very deep right now. As you know, I'm also exploring a lot around the mindfulness arena, so it goes very deep internally as well. And the other area where I'm venturing out nowadays is into civilizational issues, so broader economic issues and issues of democracy. And of course, freedom is so important in every one of these domains that it's been just a fabulous way of kind of approaching life.
Can you say more about what freedom means to you? Freedom is a word that's very important in my life. And so most people relate to freedom like not work. But what is it to you?
Well, I think that that's part of it, but it's really not work in at something that doesn't make you feel vibrant and vital and alive or profoundly meaningful or touches your heart or brings a smile to your face. So, but freedom means many things. You know, I've traveled as I've been traveling the world in the last few months, launching my new book. I've been to Mumbai, where freedom clearly means has a huge economic element to it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Hong Kong and spoken in Hong Kong, where freedom means very much right now participative democracy and the feeling that that the freedoms of democracy are alive. But freedom can mean spiritual depth and living from our authenticity or from our values or from our virtue. And freedom can also mean skydiving and sitting on the beach and having fun with our friends and family. So to me, there's a wide range of what freedom actually means. And what's beautiful about the life planning aspect of understanding freedom is that what we're interested in the financial world is delivering freedom as our clients want it, as our clients define it into their lives. And a lot of that has to do with finding our own authenticity. So where is it that we just feel flourishing as we come alive in the world?
And so we're going to circle back to that idea of finding our authenticity. You know, George, I have always felt and intended that transforming someone's financial life, which I can do more reliably in the coaching program that I offer. Most financial planning clients already come with a level of financial success, right? But if I'm able to transform your financial life, I have an access to transforming your entire life. It's like an entry point into touching someone's heart and soul that way. Would you say that?
You know, what's been interesting, I totally agree, Hillary, and that's really how I began. I began doing taxes and then went into financial planning and realized that financial planning was really all about freeing a person to live the life that they really want to live. Nowadays, what I do and what I teach people is to lead from a conversation of meaning. Rather than a conversation of finance. Because if the client assumes that we are all about finance, sometimes they'll shut down what is most meaningful for them. And they'll assume that we are more about the 401k or the tax, something or other, or an estate plan or stocks or portfolio construction. So we lead, actually, life planners tend to lead from a conversation of meaning and letting the client know that that's what's most important.
Yeah. And people don't walk around. I mean, I don't know about I know you live part of the time in Hawaii. So maybe it's more common for people to walk around connected to their authenticity and their values and their heart in Hawaii. But in Silicon Valley, it's kind of rare.
Yeah, no, Silicon Valley feels a lot like, the other place I hang out is Cambridge, Massachusetts. And kind of the academic and the technological rigors of those two environments have taken over a lot of, I think, the experience of freedom that sometimes has been in both of those environments. I completely agree.
Yes, and then I think people start to shun the idea of work. The whole FIRE movement, the financial
Right,
independence, retire early, is in the context of work is bad, right?
right.
But you are and have created a career and a life that has you be connected to that which is most important to you. And to do that is work.
Well, that's right. I mean, I love the fire movement. I love any movement that is moving us toward finding what freedom is for us. But I think really the question is, what is that? What is that freedom first and foremost, and then come back and look at the finances and let's look at how we can deliver it absolutely as quickly as we possibly can.
Yes. So any conversation with you about financial planning would be incomplete without talking about your 3 questions. It's remarkable how frequently in my conversations with other financial planners, I mean, people just say, well, what about Kinder's 3 questions, right? It's just like a thing that people talk about. So let's talk about those 3 questions and the significance of them.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Let me just throw one more kind of frame around them, and that is that I think the greatest financial planners, and you know this as a great coach yourself as well as a planner, that the greatest financial planners are really the best listeners, and the three and a lot of emphasis is placed on the technologies we use, the kind of questions we use. And one of the things I'm famous for are these 3 questions. But a lot of that, a lot of the setup to get to the 3 questions with a client and a lot of the delivery of them has to do with an engaged conversation where we, the coach, the life planner, the financial planner, are really great listeners, really listening to who the client says they really want to be. And so I just want to frame it with that the engagement is so important. But the 3 questions, they're a tool that just very briefly, the first one is, and you do them in order.
Mm-hmm,
And the
mm-hmm.
first one is you have all the money, you suddenly realize you have all the money you need for the rest of your life. You know, maybe you're not as rich as Bezos or the Queen of England, but you've got all that you need for the rest of your life. The question then is, what would you do with your life? So that kind of loosens you up and you know, you win the lottery suddenly and there you are, you've got it. So the second question, and all that you need is obviously is a relative thing, and it's meant to be that way. So what do you need? The second question is more deep and more meaningful. The second question has a scenario in it where you are visiting your doctor and he or she has conducted some tests or something, but you're not expecting anything. You're feeling perfectly healthy. But the doctor shocks you with the news that you have a rare ailment, and your illness means that you'll feel perfectly healthy until the moment of your death. But it also means that at some point, 5 years from now, up to 10 years from now, you're just going to keel over. That's it. There'll be no warning of that moment in advance. You'll last at least 5 years, but you won't make it to the 10th. And so the question once again is, what would you do with your life if you knew that you only had that period of time left? How would things change then? And you can see, you can feel it. It feels more deep and more meaningful. And for most people, family begins to come up or relationships come up. Not for everybody, but certainly legacy issues begin to emerge as being much more important than what you could just kind of throw your new money at. And then the third question goes deeper still, and it's again a legacy question. And it starts off with the same scenario. You're going to the doctor, you feel perfectly well. And this time the doctor really stuns you with the information, the knowledge that they've misdiagnosed you, that you have had an illness, and that illness has come to term, that you only have 24 hours left to live. And the question is not what you would do. The question is really reflecting on all the dreams you've had for your life going forward, all the things that you've anticipated doing and being and becoming. The question then is, what did you not get to do? Who did you not get to be? And again, that's really the most reflective of questions. And it turns out that that question, when we address it with the client, tends to be the most powerful question, and the question that launches what we call a life plan, looking at, because it's a question of greatest meaning. And the other exercises we do will sprinkle in different elements, including question one, question two. But if you don't fulfill all of the things that arise in reflection to question three, the client won't feel fully satisfied, and their authenticity will be held back.
And in many ways, these questions are a pathway to that authenticity or a solution to the problem of people spending most of their day engaged in work that isn't fulfilling or pursuing short-term ends, right? This takes us right to the eternal.
Exactly. This is it. This is what we were born on this planet to do. Absolutely. And so it is a pathway toward that. And it's a wonderful reminder. I mean, I've been doing these exercises for so many years, decades, really.
Yes.
And I still do them, Hillary.
Do
I
you?
mean, yeah, I still do them. I might do them now just once a year. And it's kind of random when I do them. I might be leading a workshop and delivering them to everybody else, and I just go, "Wow, I haven't done this in a while. I wonder if things have changed."
Well,
So
it's hard. It's hard to actually get yourself to a place, even the little bit that I got present to that question, the third question especially, it has me emotional. It's like a
yeah,
place I don't really want to go.
right,
And
right.
I don't think it's a question most people are expecting from their financial advisor.
That's right. And no, but it's a place in some ways we don't want to go, but when we hear it, and if we go to it, we recognize that it's a place we have to go. That it is a place that can stimulate a feeling of despair that we haven't done what we really are here to do. But for most of us, that despair is momentary, and we go, well, darn it, this is telling me what I've got to do, and it's time to make it happen. So that's what it does for most people, is it stimulates them then to action. And we train advisors who have are become life planners to actually help a client move through those emotions. And the main thing is to pause with them and to share empathy in that moment and allow the client to find their way through, just through that experience of empathy.
It really is profound when a client is in my office and we get to a moment where they're sharing their heart. And, I think many financial advisors have a natural analytical skill set. I've always felt that my skill set was more naturally emotional. And so it's something for example, I hear financial advisors say, oh my gosh, what would I do if a client cried in my office? It's like, I feel honored and fulfilled and rewarded. And it can be very profound if people will let themselves go there.
Yeah.
Let's say someone's listening and they're realizing as they're struggling to answer these questions, doing the hard work of answering these questions, that they're not necessarily on a path toward their authenticity or freedom. What then would you say to them?
Well, I think that several things. I mean, one of them is just you've got to. I mean, this is your life, and it's the only life. I mean, maybe in India we live multiple lives, but here in America we tend to just think that we just live one. So better make it worth all that it can possibly be. And
this one is all we know about.
it's all we know about.
It's all we can prove.
So if it's, I think working with someone like yourself or someone who is trained as a life planner or a life coach is a great idea, and a life planner is a financial life planner even better. But we also have a consumer website that is free that you could go to that tries to encourage you as well. I think having another person there, if we're stumbling and going, gosh, I haven't done it and I don't know if I can do it, then I think having a mentor, a friend, a colleague who is dedicated to this kind of work would be really wonderful. But the truth is that we were born to do this work. The person that we go, oh my God, I can't believe that I've not become that person. That's the person I've always longed to be. We can put that off year after year after year. And at some point, it may be that we can't do the work. It may be that it involves our bodies in some way, and our bodies begin to age. So it's really crucial that we do it. And then the second piece to this is really interesting. I'm sure you've seen this, Hillary. When someone comes alive to some dream that they've had and they've put off, and they decide, I'm going to do it. And it may be healing a relationship with a long lost sister, or it may be writing the great American novel that they always wanted to write, or acting in an independent film. It could be any number of things. If they suddenly go, I'm going to do it, and they make it happen, everything in their life becomes filled with vitality. And what we find is that we are far more productive in everything we do. So this FIRE movement, and where you talk about the not wanting to work, what happens is that even your work comes alive with vitality when you find that you're actually living who you're meant to be.
Yes. And that is my experience as well. So, and many of the stories, by the way, and we'll link to the website you mentioned. I believe you're talking about lifeplanningforyou.com. Is that correct?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, great. And we're definitely doing this work with clients when they let us. It's not 100%, right? Everyone hasn't connected to that desire, but it is definitely powerful to have a guide, because it's in conversation that you discover things, right? It's tough to lead yourself through a transformational or insightful inquiry. At least that's my experience. And many of the stories that are told in your life planning book are about, because I think that the immediate question that's right there is, but George, I have a mortgage. I have 2 kids who need to go to college. I have to pay the bills. I live in wherever you live. Life is expensive. How can I remake this machine I've built? And a lot of the stories that you tell are about making incremental changes, but essentially people reconstructing their lives.
Yes,
re-envisioning and reconstructing, and like not letting that be an obstacle, because goodness, if you get to the end of your life, you don't want to have that kind of regret. Like this was the fulfillment of my life, but instead I paid the mortgage.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, it's really true. The largest excuses, the ones that we let get to us more than any others, are our money excuses. And so we think we can't do it because of money, which is why it's so great that life planners exist within the financial planning community. And the other thing that this conversation allows, not only the discovery, the self-discovery is allowed, but in each of these areas where we block ourselves from becoming who we're meant to be in a way, what happens with a great life planner is that we're given permission. Just again and again, we're told, no, you've got to do that. That's who you were born to be. That's who you were meant to be. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we do, Hillary, you'll love this as a coaching technique, is we'll put 2 hands up. Okay, we've got the right hand over here and the left hand over here. And we'll go, okay, here's the life you've always longed to live. And here's the life you're living right now. Okay, you've got a choice. Which one do you choose? And do you know, in all my years of doing this work with the 2 hands, no one has ever chosen not to live into their dreams.
So profound. I'm struggling not to get choked up. It's so meaningful to be able to empower and enable someone to step into the life that they've always wanted, and the life that is an answer to the infinite concern rather than the finite concern of the mortgage. And don't get me wrong, home ownership is important, but right. I'm not disparaging a traditional life. I'm just saying that I think a lot of people are our heads down and maybe not thinking at this level. So this conversation could be an invitation to that. So let's talk about something very of this earth. Let's talk about the stock market. I would like to hear your thinking because I think it's going to be profound for people. Like, people have a lot of emotion about the stock market. You're invested in the stock market, right, George?
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, the general thinking right now is we're at what could be the end of a 10-year bull market. And so the recession is coming. Anxiety can be really high. What would you say to someone who feels deep anxiety and worry about the future? How can people live a worry-free life?
Well, there's a number of things. I mean, one of them is just about the stock market itself and how we understand it. And that's a large topic in and of itself, and I'll touch on that. And the second thing is doing kind of inner work, spiritual work, mindfulness practice, that kind of practice where we are learning to lessen and lessen our attachments to our anxieties, our worries, our fears, as well as our greeds, the more avaricious desires. In regard to the market, I haven't worried about the market in probably 30 years. I've been invested in the stock market for maybe 40 or 50, and I haven't worried about the market in 30 years. And that includes the internet bubble and the banking crisis and all of those things. I haven't worried about it at all. And that has to do with, the frame that you gave us, which is a wonderful one. It was one that I used to play with a lot about, how the bull markets and the bear markets and how often they occur and the cycles of those markets. And what I realized, having invested largely thinking in that way for a decade or so, this was back in the mid 70s to the mid 80s, I realized that in all those years that I'd done it, I'd done some amazing things like calling the bottoms of markets and getting out at the top and all that. But when I really looked at my overall record over a period of 10 years, I really hadn't beaten the market. There were things that I hadn't done as well, that I didn't talk about as much, and that I didn't look, and that I didn't recognize inside myself as much. So I shifted 30 years ago to having a more of a passive approach, more of very low cost index funds. I mean, it's a very savvy approach. It's with all this study of value stocks and high tech stocks and all the rest, as well as the bond market. How do you construct a portfolio that you can essentially buy and hold forever?
You're speaking my language.
Yeah. So I haven't worried in 30 years. You can quote me. Yeah.
Well, and the seventh stage of money maturity is aloha. Right?
Yeah. That's right.
So, describe aloha for us.
Well, aloha there are lovely elements throughout the seven stages, and the one that I've described as the loveliest is the passing of a blessing from one person to another, regardless of economic difference, and often by surprise. Often, people don't even, it might be years before they recognize that you did it for them. So it's selfless in that way, but very sweet and generous. So
I think you would agree most people are not quite at aloha yet. And certainly if they're working or thinking about hiring a financial advisor, there's some stress or anxiety. Am I going to achieve my goals? Is my money going to outlive me or not? But I think the point of, and what I got out of the 7 stages of money maturity is that there's transcendence possible, that you can get to a place where you have that confidence. And for example, and you say this in the book, even if you lose it, you can make it back.
Right.
right? Like money
Right.
doesn't have to be this zero sum game, kind of scary game to play, challenge in life that might not be surmounted, but that it can be it's a fundamental area of human concern, and that it's something with the right attention on it that can be a source of joy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there are just really healthy ways that we can relate to money, and that's really what the seven stages is all about. But it does involve really more movements through ourselves of psychological awareness and uh, basically maturing inside ourselves and finding our way to who we're meant to be.
Exactly, exactly. So, can we talk about your most recent book, Golden Civilization? Describe the transition from financial planning to what you're now writing about.
Oh yeah. Well, I thought I was all done with financial planning, really. I mean, I sold my business 20 years ago, but I've been training advisors all over the world now for the last 20, and that's been very rewarding. But I thought that I was really moving toward a close when the banking crisis occurred in 2008, 2009. And what happened then was I took it very personally. I'd been working in the financial services industry for decades, trying to bring greater integrity and a real focus on client service and a fiduciary relationship with the client and client freedom. And to see that this kind of malfeasance, this kind of fraud could arise in the financial services industry after dedicating my life to make sure that it wouldn't arise, I was devastated. And I thought for a while, gosh, have I wasted my life?
Wow.
Have I just thrown my life away? And so it's that kind of despair that we find a way to bounce back from. And I bounced back from it with anger, really, at first. And so originally the book that's called A Golden Civilization and the Map of Mindfulness, originally it was called A Banking Manifesto. And it was out there going after the banks and all the villains out there that had brought on the crisis. But what happened as I worked my way through it was I realized that in life planning, because we dream first, we look at who it is we're meant to be, that maybe a better way of addressing the issues of civilization would be to ask civilization, ask everybody in the world to dream. What is the world we really want? And to make it really concrete and really clear. And then what we do in life planning, once we have that dream of what who the client wants to be, we just deliver it. So my thought was, let's do that for civilization. And it's been really wonderful, well, horrible too, but these last few years with all over the world issues of, and I travel all over the world, issues of freedom of the press and is democracy suffering and freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and inequalities and concerns about the planet and all of these things happening all over the world. And so I thought, well, let's put this together, not just for economics, but let's include democracy and let's include the media. And so it became an image and leadership, and it became an image of a golden civilization. And how can we accomplish it? And so I've been traveling the world, life planning civilization, community by community, wherever I go. And I think I mentioned I was just in Mumbai, I was just in Hong Kong, I was in Singapore and Tokyo. I've been to London and Amsterdam. I'm going back to Edinburgh and Glasgow and Leeds and Coventry and London again. And in America, I've been all up and down the coasts of California and been in the Midwest and St. Louis, back and forth to St. Louis, all over New England. So I'm just everywhere I'm going. I'm leading these conversations and spreading the message that my book is trying to help people to look at. Hey, I mean, this is the thing. It's time. I mean, why do we live in a world that's flawed? Why is there corruption still in this world? We've had 250 years of brilliant entrepreneurial endeavor coming out of the Industrial Revolution. How come at the top of our hierarchies of power, we aren't finding wisdom at the top of every one of them?
Right.
Shouldn't that be happening by this point? And my argument is yes, it should, and we should all be flourishing and not wrestling with a polarized politics and with kind of darkness. We should be all coming to a great flourishing at this point with what we've delivered so far. So my thought is, let's make it happen, and let's make it happen this generation. Let's end corruption forever. Let's end war. Let's end disrespect between peoples, and let's just take it on and realize that this is what all people want. Nobody wants war. Nobody wants corruption. Nobody wants disrespect, and nobody wants the massive inequality that we find right now. So let's end it. It's time to make it happen.
So I'm so glad you shared the journey of that, and its inception was about the financial crisis. And your view on that wasn't, well, I'm a victim of this thing that's got my portfolio at half of what it was last year. Your view was, what is wrong with society that we have people in power doing this to us?
Yeah.
And it really was foisted on so many people.
So many. And what's my responsibility? Because I think in a democracy, what we haven't fully owned is that in a democracy, we're all culpable. And if corruption is happening, then it's our job to go and say, nope, no more, and begin to stand up and make a difference.
So can you say more about that? I see the word democracy in a lot of writings about you. Talk about your relationship to democracy, because I have to admit, I'm a little disenchanted with the entire system right now.
Right,
I sort of think benevolent dictatorship would be a good solution.
Yeah.
But talk about what you see.
Well, the problem with the benevolent dictatorship is that the next person coming along might not be so benevolent.
I know.
And so I think that what's more valuable is that we build this authenticity that you and I care about so much, and this good-heartedness into the system. We build it into every individual human being, and that's something that can be done through a mix of emotional intelligence, of mindfulness, of great coaching, of empathic practices, of communication. There are things that we can do now as a civilization if we took it on, and it can be done from grade school on. It's not brain surgery.
It's not complex.
Yeah, and
we're all born that way anyway, right?
Yeah, we're all born that way. And what's happened in democracy, I mean, we want kindness, we want generosity. What's happened in democracy is that over the last 30 or 40 years, as we've seen an explosion in the high tech realm, in the Silicon Valley, which you reflected on earlier, we have allowed a greater and greater inequality to develop. We've allowed the media sources that we get to be controlled by large forces. All of them are controlled by oligarchy or by billionaires or by large corporations, and in the worst of countries, by large governments. And so, well, this is another problem. It's like a life planning problem. What's the solution? What do we all want? What we want is a media that is genuinely free and scientific, investigative, speaks the truth, all these things. Well, let's make it happen. Let's get together and design it. Let's make it happen. We want a democracy where we are all informed, and therefore where we vote knowing what in fact is true and what isn't. Right now, what happened in the media starting about 30 years ago was we allowed it to become polarized rather than insisting on kind of a balanced frame wherever the media occurred, so that people could weigh different points of view. So there are many things that we can just take on and do. And I think that if we build our hearts inside ourselves, as I've traveled the world, Hillary, I go to Hong Kong, they're passionate about democracy. Everywhere I go, people are passionate about democracy because they're in systems that don't have it, that are overly autocratic. And even relatively healthy environments like Singapore, which has a mix of democracy and autocracy, they long for real democracy over there, for really being able to speak their truth and for being able to have a press that they can trust and isn't just coming through autocratic sources. So I think we can design this. I think this is something we can all do. And I think we can do it without polarization by coming together in community, looking at what the vision is, and then executing on the vision. And that's what we're finding with our Golden Civilization conversations, which are now happening, I think, on five continents all over the world.
It's beautiful. You've become from a teacher of financial planners to almost a spiritual teacher at this point. It's a very ambitious plan. And so the title of the book is A Golden Civilization and the Map of Mindfulness. So when I think of the term mindfulness, I think of presence, being present in the moment.
Right.
Is that what you mean? You say you studied 50 years as a mindfulness practitioner. Yeah. Tell me, what am I missing from the definition or context of mindfulness?
No, you're getting it. You're nailing it right beautifully. It is being in the present moment. The 50 years, I've probably practiced mindfulness 2 to 3 hours a day for 50 years and taught it for the last 30 years. What is interesting, we talk about being in the present moment, but it's rather glib, and it's rather, like being on the beach in Maui or something. Who is it that's living in the present moment? And our images,
yes, cocktail in hand.
Right, cocktail, exactly, cocktail in hand, and sunset, over there past the waves, and it's much more rich than that. I'll ask you the trick question that I ask all my audiences: have you ever had a moment in the past where you really felt free? Whether it's on the beach or making love or working with your clients or your family. Have you ever had moments like that? And probably go yes, of course. And it's a trick question. And I'd say, no, you all got it wrong. So I'll ask an audience of 1,000 this question, and they'll all say yes. And I say, no, you got it wrong. None of us have ever experienced a moment of freedom in the past. The only time we've ever experienced a moment of freedom is in the present moment. And that is, it sounds rather childlike and so obvious that we turn our heads and go, wait a minute, what are you doing, Kinder? What's going on here?
Seems like a trick answer to a question.
Doesn't it? It does. But what I realized, and in the book I do this, is I realized that our map of time and space is hugely about the past and the future. If you map time and space, there's very little of the present moment in it. But our experience of life is all the present moment. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I've done is I've remapped time and space. And I've mapped it so that the present moment is the major thing happening in time and space. And there's another way of understanding. So what all of this is really about, I mean, there are so many studies now, scientific studies about mindfulness that echo this, and about freedom and about happiness happening in the present moment. What's wonderful about a practice of mindfulness is that it gives us a way of gaining a kind of mastery of being in the present moment. And the more that you are in the present moment, the more you experience moments of freedom. That comes from a famous scientific experiment that Daniel Gilbert, probably the most famous scientist now at Harvard, did, where he asked people 3 questions when he pinged them with an iPhone app. Are you present and focused, or are you distracted? And what are you doing? And it turns out that, and are you happy or unhappy? And it turns out that that if you're distracted, you're unhappy, and if you're present, you tend to be happy. And I think of that as freedom.
What does it look like when you practice mindfulness for 3 hours a day? What are you actually doing?
Well, the practice that I've used many practices over the years. There are so many different contemplative practices coming from many different traditions, Western and Eastern and secular now. What I'm doing right now is it's just It's just watching, closing my eyes, and just being very present with moment by moment sensations, usually the breath at my nostrils or my belly, and just watching them arise and pass away, arise and pass away, and challenging myself to be really present with them. And what the value of it is not only that I've probably gotten much sharper at being present, but also that in order to do that requires the development of a lot of character inside of myself. It requires a tremendous amount of patience. It requires empathy when I wander off and am unhappy or whatever and can't get back to the present moment. It requires concentration and focus. It requires me to work with my anxiety to lessen my stress in order to be present. It requires equanimity and tranquility. So and it requires courage at times. And it requires selflessness. The more selfless I am, the more I'm able to be there just for these moments of sensation. So what's happening is that what seems, I'm tempting just to be with sensation, but I'm actually developing, I think, character and virtues inside myself as I do it. So that's really the kind of the practice.
You literally meditate for 3 hours a day?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How have you gotten so much done?
Hillary, I think it's why I've gotten so much done. You know what? If you're really present in the present moment, you have many more moments than other people do because you're more here. So how many moments do you actually experience in an hour? And my hunch is that I now experience many more moments than I used to, which means I'm much quicker when I'm writing something, when I'm figuring something out. I'm much quicker at executing things, and I'm much clearer about what I do. So I think that my productivity comes from mindfulness.
That's profound and motivating. I certainly can't go back to asking you about money after that conversation. Is there anything about anything we haven't discussed that you think is critical to this conversation?
No, I think you've really led us into the depths here, and I think it's wonderful. And hopefully, people will get this far.
I know. I tell you, George, I just took on meditating 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening.
Yeah.
And it's almost like more than I can handle.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and when you ask yourself, truly, what is 40 minutes a day, right? I watched a movie for an hour and a half last night, and it doesn't seem like a commitment or a cost. But why does meditating for 20 minutes seem like I couldn't possibly afford that much time out of my day? So to hear you say 3 hours is like, okay,
Yeah.
you know, it's like those moments in the gym when you can't pick up the bar,
Right.
the dumbbell, and then someone puts
Yeah.
2 plates on it and looks like they're dancing.
So let me reframe those difficulties because I had them too, and I still have them occasionally come up. So those difficulties that we have, even doing 20 minutes a day, much less 40 minutes a day, the pressure to do the email, to leap to the text message, to we forgot to give our child their lunch to take to school, those kinds of things that come up, the challenges with anxiety, with frustration, with annoyance, those kinds of things. That's where our character's being built. That's where we're actually gaining freedom because we're practicing in a way that we can never practice just on a moment by moment daily basis, how to overcome those difficulties. That's what those difficult moments are all about. A bad meditation is a good meditation.
Thank you. A meditation that's full of distraction is still a meditation.
It is. It is indeed. It is indeed.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks from you to the beginner. I appreciate that.
I'm so glad you're doing it. I'm thrilled.
Thanks so much for this conversation. We will link to all of the books, but the one we spent the most time talking about is A Golden Civilization and the Map of Mindfulness in the show notes for today's episode. at hillaryhendershot.com/150. You are episode 150 of Profit Boss Radio.
Wow.
Thanks for joining me today, George.
A lot of fun, Hillary. Thank you so much.
Hey, Profit Boss. If after listening to today's episode, you think you might be ready to take meaningful actions with your wealth and perhaps consider working with me and my firm in some way, then I'd love to hear from you. Just go to hillaryhendershot.com/hello. That's Hillary with one L and Hendershot with two T's.com/hello. When I'm not sitting behind the mic, I'm running Hendershot Wealth Management. We're a fee-only fiduciary financial advisory firm. We work with women and couples to take their finances to the next level. Everything I talk about here on the show gets personalized and put to work for my clients. So I ask you, why wait till tomorrow when you can start realizing your full wealth potential today? The life you want to live, it doesn't have to wait. Just imagine the freedom and joy you'll experience when you've secured your retirement and enjoyed the years leading up to it. That's what I want for you. That's what I do for my clients. And if that's what you want for yourself, just head on over to my website right now, hillaryhendershot.com/hello. All of our initial conversations are totally complimentary. So let's just see where a friendly conversation may lead. hillaryhendershot.com/hello. As we wrap things up here for today, I need to review with you the things I have to disclose as a fiduciary financial advisor offering wealth management services through my firm, Hendershot Wealth Management, LLC. You should know that the opinions I express on Profit Boss Radio are my own, and they can change. The content I provide in the show is for general education. It's not intended as specific investment advice, nor do I recommend any specific financial products. Unlike how I roll at home with my husband, I can't guarantee that my statements, opinions, or forecasts are always 100% right. Of course, I wish I could peek into that proverbial crystal ball, but so far, I haven't found it. Past performance is not indicative of future results. I talk a lot about indexes, and I want you to know you can't actually buy an index because, of course, when you take a list of companies and create a product that allows people to invest in those companies, there are fees and expenses involved that reduce returns. Remember, all investing involves risk, which, as you know, means you could lose your money. And I have to tell you that there is no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. And that should keep my lawyers happy. Have a great day.